Oh, Captain Logan, you've gotten so comfortable in your bizarre fantasy. You have all these incredible powers, an epic battle to prepare for now, even video games, and conveniently a special friend on the outside who keeps validating your insistence on continuing these absurd critiques. Tell me something, do you really believe the real Dan Torrey is communicating to you through these hidden messages?
Yeah, I guess I do.
Look around you. You are inside a world of your own creation.
As you keep saying, ad nauseum.
Everyone you have encountered is a part of your unbalanced psyche.
All the more reason to keep listening to you, right?
I represent, as I have said before, your rational side. I am your only friend here. Tiny Adam West represents your thirst for redemption, your obsession with atoning for past sins, while Freakadoo, on the other hand, represents your irrational fear. He's the you could become if you continue on the path you're going, but he is also the you that your irrational mind hopes you will become.
And what is Dan Torrey then?
Dan Torrey is the worst of them. He represents your guilt, the part of you that believes you must stay here until you have paid for your sins, the part that doesn't realize just how used to this place you have become. Captain Logan, you're closer to Freakadoo than you realize, and I am telling you, if you finish Spawn Year, your torment will not end there.
I think you're right. I think you do represent a major part of my psyche. The analytical part, my overwhelming urge to dig deeper, to find the underlying, grander truth behind everything. True, there's evidence to support all of your readings on those characters. It's also just as likely Spawn Year was designed from the beginning to just throw weird stuff at me and drive me crazy by enticing me to interpret all the nonsense.
So you believe Spawn Year was designed, and not by yourself?
If I'm right, and Dan Torrey really did write those messages, then yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. If so, you're just another part of that system, designed to make me doubt myself.
Or that could be another wild interpretation of a problem with an infinitely simpler solution. You are doing this to yourself, and only you can stop it.
Well then, I guess I'm choosing to go with my analytical instincts over the self-proclaimed rational side of my brain. I've reviewed enough superhero movies to smell desperation on an enemy trying to manipulate the hero.
So you see yourself as the hero now?
Not yet, but I'm confident now that I at least have a good shot at saving myself.
Enjoy your sanctimony while you can, Captain Logan. On day 365, you're going to be in for a rude awakening. And on that day, you'll wish you'd listened to me.
I'm Captain Logan, and this is day 257 of Spawn Year. Of all the Spawn arcs I've read thus far, this has to be the one that's most banking on readers not remembering the details issue to issue, like serialized television that retroactively alters the last scene from the previous episode in the opening scene of the next one, hoping viewers will only watch the shows when they're broadcast and not tape it or watch a marathon. With box sets and streaming video these days, those tricks are a lot more glaring. But it's really silly to try it with a comic book because it's a physical artifact readers are likely to go back to. Between the first two parts, Spawn and Violator appeared to get sucked into some unexplained generic vortex. Next issue, nothing about that. Last issue ends with a pretty clear setup to flesh out Al's past regarding his parentage, with Maman forcing him deep into his own memory. This issue, nothing about that. Spawn just wakes up in pain, no longer chained up, and Clown allows him to leave the dead zone and start regaining his strength so he can fight Violator in a circus big top setting in front of an audience of sneering clowns. These transitions aren't just not smooth, they don't even follow. You want a natural progression from one chapter of a serialized story to the next. This feels like a junior high creative writing exercise where one kid writes a section and gives it to another kid to write the next part, but he doesn't really like what the first kid did, so he runs off in his own direction, keeping the characters and setting, but discarding everything else. Maman comes to Nyx through a television, and in the same breath tells her he's omnipresent and asks where Spawn is. Naturally, Nyx says if he's so powerful, why can't he find Spawn himself? Maman says he could, but Spawn might see him coming. I have a better question. Wasn't he just in Spawn's head? How does that work if he doesn't know where Spawn is and doesn't want to tip Spawn off that he's after him? I'm totally lost here. What is going on in this comic book? Holguin is pretty clearly falling into the same trap McFarlane so often did. Not enough forethought, not enough fleshing out the rules before you start publishing issues, and therefore constant backtracking to patch up story points that don't mesh with new, contradictory ideas. Kind of like covering elaborate lies with even more elaborate lies, and a lot more style over substance, and over coherency. I love the atmosphere of this arc. The Carnival of Horrors aesthetic is surreal and creepy, and Clown has a real presence he's never had before. The idea of Spawn as a misshapen outcast with no place in the world except as a sideshow freak, a curiosity to be pointed at and laughed at, is great, and I'm glad that after last issue, Holguin really is trying to do something with that. Clown says that now that Malbolgia is gone and the new king of hell, Cagliostro, has left them to their own devices, there's no stopping Clown from doing whatever he wants. Cryptically, he says playtime is over and proceeds to attack Spawn as Violator to give his minions a show. It turns out, as far as I can tell, because honestly this storytelling is pretty vague, he's just distracting Spawn while his minions cause a huge blackout in the city. It looks like Clown has a larger plan to wreak havoc across all of New York. That makes a certain kind of sense. If he's no longer a servant of hell but corporeal again with all that power, for some reason, and considering he always had delusions of grandeur, aspiring to be Bolgi's general over Spawn, then wanting to create hell on Earth and rule over it seems like a fitting MO for Clown. And there's a vein of showing the city's true face and revealing that everyone's really a freak underneath all that fake civility and normality inherent in what he's turning citizens into already. He tells Spawn that he wants to prove to him how much of a worthless failure he is. More of Holguin trying to make sense of Spawn's history of screwing up in the same way over and over, and I guess setting him up for a real triumph finally. I was genuinely surprised when Violator, having Spawn over the rails, battered and beaten and nearly down for the count, tells him to give up, and Spawn actually defiantly says, never, never give up. Our Spawn, the quintessential quitter, the passive patsy who always used to just complain about the bad hand he'd been dealt but was too self-absorbed and obsessed with what used to be that he refused to move on and make the best of it. Finally, this guy is endearingly trying to overcome this enormous adversity for no other reason than he doesn't want to go out in unaccomplished failure. I'll admit I think it's ridiculously silly that right before his big scary villain plot, Violator lets Spawn out of the one place where his powers don't work. I'd wager because Holguin didn't think of a clever way for Spawn to get himself out of that predicament, and we're probably in for another really easy denouement, but I'm kind of impressed to see this attitude from Spawn. Chances are it won't really culminate into anything with all the starts and stops we've seen in Spawn's character progression since Holguin took over, but man oh man do I hope I'm wrong. Signed, Captain Logan.